Oh, yeah. The NFL draft and rookies. Hell yeah.
Podcast off the rails already.
But there is not a chance in hell Justin Fields is finishing in the top 10.
There you know what, Mikey? Shut it.
He wants
Why
it.
not?
You don't want the smoke.
He's Calvin Johnson. He's Calvin
Oh,
Johnson.
good.
Oh,
God.
my
Yes,
God.
yes, and yes.
What are we gonna do with you?
It just, it adds a little extra flavor to the podcast.
I think you're disrespecting David Njoku.
Thank God
Yeah.
for Joe Flacco. That's all I can say. I'll help the owners. Don't draft Kadarius Toney.
I have to give the people what they want. I mean, come on. I'm going to milk it. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
I'll give you something to milk.
Let's rock and roll.
Happy holidays from the MHA podcast. We're coming to you from Friday night and the day after the Broncos Thursday night game, and me coming to you all the way from Newport News, Virginia. Still trying to do this podcast. Of course, it's the playoffs, a lot to talk about. Hopefully my audio is coming through okay, and we hope everyone is having a nice holiday season so far. Gentlemen, how's your Friday night going?
It's going all right. Ready to, still, talk some fantasy football. The Broncos are doing good except for last night, but we're not going to talk about that. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's weird on a Friday night, but hey, we were all, beside you with the time change, and I had something going on Wednesday night, and we tried yesterday, so we're trying it on a Friday. Try something new. We gotta try something new.
That's how dedicated we are here on the MHA podcast. Mikey, how we doing?
Hey, we're just doing a lot of Friday night prep work because I got a big game coming up.
That's right. Mikey's still in the playoffs. So we'll talk about how all that came about. Obviously, he has a bye this week. So, yeah, let's get into it, and we'll start things off with the news.
I don't understand what the news is. It's just like, hey, here's a bunch of you can't fix that happened that was horrible.
So I did type up this news on Tuesday. So if you guys know any updates, definitely let me know. We'll start with the Hot Tamales, whose stud running back, David Montgomery, has a tear in his MCL and is perceived to be done for the year. While last I heard he was seeking a second opinion, he won't be back in time to help the Hot Tamales for his playoff run. Mikey, how are we feeling about that? I know you have your three big guns, but does that put things at ease for you so you don't have to worry about trying to switch him in and out? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, I'm going to use a Toddism here and say it's a double-edged sword. It's
Yes.
Because it basically makes my decision for me. It's going to be those three big guns, but I lost Isaac Guerrero at the same time. So for however long this playoff run lasts, my running back depth is officially gone. So in previous years, I've had to deal with, injuries kind of hurting me at the end, and it's hurting my depth. As long as my starters stay healthy, then I still feel like I got a good chance.
Man, oh man, tough to have at this point of the season, but he does have some starters in place. He just mentioned it. The possible running back replacement, Isaac Guerrero, still dealing with a hamstring issue, did not practice for the 49ers on Wednesday, so I'm assuming he's out now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. CUP running back Kenneth Walker, who was not practicing on Tuesday, seems to be ready to go. I did look that one up as I was going through before this podcast today. CeeDee Lamb still nursing a shoulder issue, seemed fine against the Lemonheads last week, probably ready to go this week. Hot Tamales wide receiver Malik Neighbors limited in Wednesday's practice. He's dealing with foot and knee injuries, slowing down the Giants wide receiver. Mikey, is he ready to go?
From everything that I've read, he'll be ready to go.
All right, good for him. Speaking of another great running back, Joe Mixon for Eaton W's was limited in practice on Wednesday after suffering a minor ankle injury against the Dolphins. But the Texans running back says he'll be ready to go this weekend. Also, Eaton W's wide receiver George Pickens is going to be out once again this weekend, dealing with a hamstring issue. Kilgore Trout, wide receiver T. Higgins, was given the day off on Wednesday to rest. He's got a knee thing as well. He seems like he'll be ready to go this weekend. Trout's running back Tony Pollard still not able to practice. Aggravated an ankle issue, and if you're not practicing on Friday, they're probably not going to play this weekend. And Kilgore Trout tight end Zach Ertz also did not practice. I have not seen an update from him. I know he was on Kilgore's bench, but he suffered a concussion. And when you're in that concussion protocol, it's definitely iffy in the air. Did I miss anything else, gentlemen?
Well, I think it was pretty kosher there. It was pretty good.
Pretty kosher on a Friday night. I love it. Okay. All right. Let's get into some let's get into some MHA trivia.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
There we go. All right. So, gentlemen, just some random week 15 stats. So we're just going to ask you some questions. We'll go back and forth, and whoever gets to 4 first wins. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm also dealing with a cold. I don't know if you guys can tell. That's been fun to deal with this week, but hopefully I can get through without sniffling too much in this one. All right, let's start things off with Todd's boy, Jaden Daniels. Completed 25 of 31 of his passes last weekend for 226 yards and 2 TDs. Well, that was his 4th game this season where he's completed at least 80% of his passes. He has tied 3 other quarterbacks who have done the same thing with a minimum of 20 passes. So 4 games of hitting 80% of his passes. And just for a little help, all 3 of these QBs have done this in the last 5 years. So name those 3 quarterbacks. We always start with Todd Diamond first. Quarterbacks that have hit 80% of their passes in 4 games in 1 season.
I'll go Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, not a bad guess, but incorrect. Over to you, Miguel.
I'm probably going to be wrong about this. This almost seems like somebody that's going to be so careful with the ball. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy. No, he's not on there as well. Some big-time name quarterbacks for sure. Back to you, Todd.
Patrick Mahomes.
No Patrick Mahomes. Back to you, Miguel.
Let's go with Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow, not a bad guess, but incorrect. I'm gonna have to start giving you guys some guesses here. One of these quarterbacks did it with a team he's not currently with. I don't know if that helps at all. But...
Matthew Stafford.
Ooh, not a bad guess. Not the correct answer either. Another quarterback that has moved, Miguel.
Let's go with the since benched Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Dun, dun, dun. I was looking for that correct button and found it. Well done, Miguel. You got Kirk Cousins. Back to you, Todd. One of these took place in 2022, and one took place in 2023. So he was pretty stellar as a quarterback last year. Which you haven't mentioned yet, I guess.
Lamar Jackson.
Not a bad guess. Not the right one, though.
Let's go with Jordan Love.
That's not a bad one. One of these guys is having a terrible 2024 season, but I guess it could be a lot of quarterbacks. It's tough to
Derek
try
Carr.
not to. Oh, that's no Derek Carr. I'll give you guys a couple more guesses, then we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, I'll go with Justin Herbert.
Golly.
We'll give you guys one more guess. Trying to think of a guy. What can I say here? One of these guys is not playing at the moment. Did I say that? Because he's out for the year. He was pretty spectacular last year, but injured this season. This other quarterback has been hurt quite a bit this year as well, but I don't think he's back quite yet. Not going well. This one isn't going well. We're gonna have to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Just name a quarterback, Todd.
Okay, Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Not a bad guess either. All right, one more guess for you, Miguel.
All right, I'll say Dak Prescott because he's hurt.
That is correct. Well done. So the other one was Trevor Lawrence back in 2022. He's also going to dinged up this year. Let's move on to the next question. Daniel's also reached 3,000 yards passing and 656 yards rushing. He is the fourth rookie quarterback to reach 3,000 yards passing and at least 500 yards rushing. Who are the other three? And all three of these quarterbacks won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Todd, since Mikey got the last one correct, you're looking. You know what you're looking for?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. He's not surprisingly not one of them. In his rookie year, at least 3,000 yards passing and 500 yards rushing.
I'm gonna say Cam Newton.
Yeah, I'm moving. You feel good about that one, Todd?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yep, that's a very good one. Well, Mikey's up 3-0. Todd. One's recent, one's, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, RG3.
Oh, very good, Todd. RG3. To you, Mikey. Since we may go ahead.
I'm just trying to think here.
Offensive Rookies of the Year.
I'll take a shot in the dark. I don't know. Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. Todd, you want to give one more guess?
Yeah. His rookie year, I'll say. What was the other one? What was it? Oh, I said RG3, Cam Newton. 1,000 yards. I'll say. Dang it! I'm Superman. I don't know.
Superman. Kyler Murray was the other one.
Oh, Kyler Murray.
All right, we'll keep going here. So we saw Aaron Rodgers have a good day throwing for 3 touchdowns on Sunday, but did you know that Rodgers led the team in rushing with 45 yards? He joins one other quarterback to lead his team in rushing after turning 40 years old. Who is that quarterback, Miguel?
After turning 40, lead his team in rushing. George Blanda.
That's incorrect. That's not a bad guess, though. That's actually a pretty good one. I will say it's a little more recent than that.
Steve Young.
Steve Young. Not a bad guess either, but not the right one.
Just trying to think of guys that are that old. I'll go Warren Moon.
Ooh. Incorrect.
Ooh, I know.
It may not be a quarterback you think.
Ooh, I know.
Old, yes, but you may not. This may not be your first. Go ahead.
Randall Cunningham.
No, you would guess that he would do it, but
Dang. He didn't do it the year. He didn't do it the year when the Vikings almost made it to the Super Bowl to play us. I thought that would have been the
not
year.
to lead his team in rushing. No.
No,
After
it's
40
right.
years old, no.
Okay.
One more guess, Miguel.
All right. I'm just going to throw Tom Brady out there.
That is correct. Well
Tom Brady.
done. Yeah, that's right. That's why I told you. It's someone you probably wouldn't think would end up doing it.
I'm going to say Troy Aikman did that. Golly.
We're going to keep going here. We're going to go to, we'll see, because we have a couple questions. We don't have that many recaps, so we're going to keep going. And we're going to make it whoever gets to 6 first, which means Todd is well behind, but Todd has a chance here. Malik Neighbors is pretty good, right? He got 10 receptions against the Ravens last Sunday, and it was the 3rd time this season he reached double figures in the reception category. There is one rookie wide receiver who had 4 in one season. Who is that wide receiver?
Oh, Randy Moss.
Incorrect. Mikey?
Really?
Oh, yeah, Todd was so confident.
Tough, huh?
Let me think. So read it back to me one more time.
Sure. So he caught Malik Neighbors, 10 receptions against the Ravens, 3rd time this season. There's one rookie wide receiver who did it 4 times in a single season.
Oh,
Wow.
I know what the answer is just because I heard it on a broadcast or when you did it. It's Odell Beckham.
Is that right, Todd?
I was gonna say Justin Jefferson, but I think OBJ. I think is the answer.
OBJ is. Well done, Miguel. I figured I'd try not to do ones we heard on the broadcast, but that's what I did. Anyway, Josh Allen, Todd, is piling up the stats the last few games. In those last 3, the Bills quarterback has totaled 14 touchdowns, rushing, receiving, and passing, which has tied him for the 3rd most in any 3-game span in NFL history. Who are the first 2?
I'll say. So one more time. Read it one more time.
Sure. In the last 3 games, Josh Allen has totaled 14 touchdowns, which has tied him for 3rd most in any 3-game span. So these 2 other quarterbacks had more. In fact, they had 15 and 16 touchdowns in a 3-game span. Who are those 2 quarterbacks? And those can be rushing, receiving, and passing.
Okay. Drew Brees.
Drew Brees. Sorry, incorrect.
Really? Okay.
Miguel.
So, if I remember correctly, Peyton Manning had like one game where he threw like 8 in one game. So, it wouldn't take a lot to get to that. So, I'm going to say Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that is correct. He's the one that had 15. The one had more, Tom Brady. All right, we'll just do that. Mikey wins MHA trivia, as he always does. Last question, though. Lamar Jackson threw for 5 touchdown passes against the putrid Giants. It's Jackson's 6th career game where he reached 5 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions. At age 28, he has the 3rd most games with those numbers. Who are the 2 quarterbacks with the most? So quarterbacks with 5 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions. He's got the 3rd most. Who are the 2 above him? Todd, we'll let you go first.
Troy Aikman.
Sorry, that is incorrect, my friend. Not a bad guess. And you have Emmitt Smith. He's going to take up a lot of touchdowns. Mikey.
Okay, I will go again with Peyton Manning.
No, that is incorrect. Surprisingly, but he's not one of them.
Okay, let's go with let's go Elway.
Oh no, I don't know how many 5-game touchdown passes Elway had.
Well, it had to be.
Maybe he had 1 or 2. I don't know if he had that many. He only had 300 passing touchdowns for his career. These guys have like 400 and 500 now. Whose guess is it?
Mine.
What do you got?
I'm going to try and go obvious again. I'll say Tom Brady.
That is correct, my man. Tom Brady. Yeah, he had 8 games of 5 touchdown passes and 0 picks. Who's the last one, Todd? Pretty obvious, dude.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Incorrect. One more guess for you, Miguel.
All right. I'll say Drew Brees.
Well done. Well done. You guys did well. Well, Mikey did really well, but
Yeah.
that's all right. That's all right. Well, I guess we can get into these quarterfinal recaps, and we'll start things off. Of course, Kilgore Trout, number 1. Hot Tamales, number 2 seeds. They were on a bye. And we'll talk about the number 6 versus number 3 matchup, Lemonheads versus CUP. All right, after 13 points Thursday for Kyron Williams and the Lemonheads, it was on to Sunday Fun Day. And it all started with notorious CUP and his wide receiver trio of CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, and scary Terry McLaurin. Those 3 were huge, piling up the touchdowns in the morning games. They scored 5 touchdowns for 60 points. And in that Cowboys game, Rico Dowdle was running all over the Panthers for 149 rush yards and 14 points. And Travis Etienne reached double figures with 11. On the other side, Tua Tagovailoa crash-landed back to earth with a measly 34 points. While he was able to get a late touchdown, and Jonnu Smith finished with 17. Tua's terrible day put the Lemonheads in a tough spot. Tank Bigsby, terrible flex option, who managed just 4 points. But Chase McLaughlin was awesome in his kicking duties for the Lemonheads, 18 points. The score is 102 to 98 heading into the afternoon games, and CUP still had their quarterback in tow with Kyler Murray. Well, the Cardinals' QB was less than stellar against the Patriots, just 23 completions and 224 yards for 33 points. And a lot of those came near the end of the game as the catches started piling up for CUP's tight end Trey McBride, who had maybe a point or two at halftime, but then finished with 13, especially in the last couple of drives for the Lemonheads. They needed some big-time performances, and they got some. James Cook, who scored a mere 4 points last week as Josh Allen scored all the touchdowns 1 week ago. This week, Cook ran for 100 yards and added 2 receptions and ran for 2 touchdowns for a whopping 24 points. Eric's first-round pick, Amon-Ra St. Brown, started off slow, but then heated up in a big way in the second half and finished with 14 receptions, 193 yards, and 1 TD for 27 points. And a very late touchdown for Jamison Williams put the Lemonheads up 161 to 149. The CUP still had Atlanta's defense on Monday night. Well, Desmond Ridder at the helm of the abysmal Raiders. The Falcons would pile up a season-high 23 points. The Falcons' defense, I should say, saving the day for Quain's squad, allowing them to advance to the semifinals and ending the Lemonheads' late-season run. Mikey, you were sitting there with me pretty much the whole day on Sunday. It was kind of wild. Obviously, we'll talk about it in a second, but the decision before the day started, maybe with an hour left, I was like, man, I don't know. The Lions-Bills game had like a 52 over-under, and I thought about changing out Tua then, and even Bucky Irving for Tank Bigsby. But obviously, the week before, we saw Irving, who was ready to go. He got hurt, was out. He's been kind of dinged up all year, and I didn't want to take the chance of having a 0 like I did last week. Or maybe he had 1 or 2, I can't recall. But neither one worked out in my favor. What else stood out to you in that matchup on Sunday? Or anywhere, any day?
Well, I mean, just what stood out to me was the fact that, Quain basically had every single one of his players reach double digits. I mean, that is a rarity. When it comes to fantasy football, to have basically all of your players. I mean, Kyler Murray didn't do as well at the quarterback position, but I mean, everybody else was just went nuts.
Yeah.
And even with that, I mean, you still almost overcame it just because of how special, St. Brown and James Cook were, in their game. So, yeah, I mean, this was a really classic playoff game, like just the back and forth between it. I enjoyed it because I didn't have to play in it.
I felt I held myself pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I felt terrible with the Tua Jared Goff thing, and I was just like, well, it's not good. I'm not feeling great about it, but what are you going to do? Maybe my guys can step up, my first round pick, and then James Cook, who was a high pick, and they came through. And Kyler Murray was kind of held in check until those last couple of drives, trying to fend off the Patriots. And McBride, who didn't do much, ended up coming up big, but after Jamison Williams scored that touchdown, I mean, I stood up and cheered and felt good that I had the lead, and a decent lead, 12-point lead heading into that Monday night game. I was at Christmas party, so I didn't get to see the game itself.
Nothing to see.
Nothing, yeah. 15-9, but 4 sacks, 2 picks, 2 blocks. 2 block kicks, I should say, for Atlanta, and they piled up 23 points. And I were talking, well, they're not a great defense, but that's how bad the Raiders are. So just unfortunate. 172 to 161 was the final. Yeah, that's how that one ended. tough, but I was also kind of happy at the end that at least it was competitive, and that's what you want for at the same time. Let's get into the next one. Number 5, Cooper's Cousins versus number 4, Eaton W's. It was a great start for Kevin's squad and his or it wasn't a great start for Kevin's squad and his wide receiver boy. Okay, so we get into Sunday, and it was a great start for Kevin on Sunday, as his boy toy of Mike Evans, the Buccaneer, soon-to-be Hall of Famer, had his best day this season, catching 9 balls, 2 of them for touchdowns and 28 massive points. Chase Brown, who has to be in line for Surprise Player of the Year, 25 more points for the Bengals running back, and Breece Hall, who's been injured quite a bit this season. He came through with double digits, even while dealing with an injury, and the Bengals defense came through with 4 picks, 2 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. while Cooper's Cousins was able to get 12 points from Devin Achan and 41 points from Jordan Love. Dylan's team needed huge performances from Bijan Robinson and DJ Moore on Monday, and got some of it, 26. But it wasn't, got 26 between the two gentlemen, but it wasn't nearly enough in the 133 to 110 win for Eaton W's, who moves on to the semifinals while the season comes to a close for Cooper's Cousins. Mikey, Kevin jumped out to a huge lead here. Just not Dylan's day, to say the least.
No, and like there was points where you thought that maybe, Dylan would have had a chance, but it was tough, just given we talked about, I remember at the beginning of the season that Dylan's team was very like boomer bust.
Yeah.
He had so many players that you just didn't know what you were going to get from him. And two of those guys in particular who have just been more down than up all year, which were the two receivers, Marvin Harrison and Tank Dell, let him down in a major way. And even though Matthew Stafford wasn't that good on Thursday night, Kevin really didn't need him to be, because he had other guys that stepped up. And you talked about Chase Brown. He has come on at the back end of the season, has just been one of the best runners in the league.
Marvin Harrison Jr., ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk more about that in the last couple episodes of the season. But yeah, so Eaton W's moving on. And as I go back to my script here, what should we talk about next? Well, I guess it has to be the doe of the week. And I think it's no contest, as Tua was played instead of Jared Goff. Goff had an amazing 89 points for the Lions. Could be the doe of the year, honestly. As I mentioned, going back and forth on it, and I just kind of stayed. I mean, it was hard. It's a hard decision, right, Mikey? Am I crazy? I mean, I understand that the over and under was something like 50 as we talk, 52. But Tua, the last 3 weeks, 55, 60, 60, 60, or at least over 60. I mean, I feel like even thinking about it now, even a few days later, if it happened the other way, because we've seen Goff put up 30-point days because the running game works so well and they don't need to throw it as much. And I figured it would be a high scoring game. It was in Detroit, but I've seen games where, they're at Detroit. It should be a high scoring game. It doesn't pan out. But Tua was playing so well and keeping my season alive. I would have felt worse if I went the other direction, I feel.
Well, and the other thing is, like, it was a game that Miami really, really needed.
Yeah.
And so you would have figured, like, that they would have done everything, and Tua would have tried to do everything on earth to win that game. He was just very, very bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good to see 89 points. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, Miami needed the game more. And yes, I mean, if Detroit playing Buffalo, and obviously Buffalo, one of the best teams in football, and knowing like, yeah, Detroit can be up, could really be up big in the first half, and they could just run the ball the rest of the way in the second half. But I mean, I guess if it was, again, you can't play the what ifs. Play that. I say that on every podcast we do. I play that every day of my life. But I don't. I maybe, even though yes, Miami needed that game, and Tua would try to do everything in his power to win that game and maybe put up. Obviously Tua is capable of putting up that many points, but I don't know. I would have stick with, because Goff was the one that at least got you almost to this point. Now, obviously, Tua
No,
kind of
it's not
came.
true. Tua, I
Well,
played Tua the last 4 weeks, and he's gotten me back into the playoffs, and that's why. I mean, Tua has been so good the last previous 4 weeks.
yeah,
That's why I stayed with him.
agreed. But I think in the situation, with Lions versus Buffalo, it can be a big game, and that maybe they would have to throw a lot and everything like that. But again, you can't predict that, because Buffalo could have shut down Goff, and probably, and instead of 89 points, he could have had less. You don't know, but I don't know. Games like that where you're like, well, because we talk about matchups all the time and saying, well, this matchup is better, and maybe he'll get more points. But some instances, you go with the team that because the Lions have just as much, you know, on the line too, because they want to get that number one seed too. So they're obviously playing, still playing
Yeah,
for
but
a lot.
that's not the same as your season coming to an end. That's
Agreed.
not the same. The edge isn't there for that same situation.
But also too, think about it, this is the Lions. The Lions have never been, the Lions. It's been a minute. It's been a minute, for the Lions. Knowing okay, we're right there, so we need to keep putting our foot on the pedal. But I agree. I mean, I agree with you that yes. I mean, you played 2 of the last 4 weeks, and kept you in the playoff hunt and got you into the playoffs. But again, it's hard. It's yeah, fantasy football. We can analyze all the numbers, the matchups, and everything you can think of that's out there. But sometimes too, you gotta have to go the Todd route and go kind of flip a coin, go with the gut, and be like, you know what, I think you might want to go with golf. But again, what do I know? I didn't make the playoffs, so
Yeah, this
what
is the
I
guy that
what,
said Derek Carr was the man.
yeah. Well,
Ooh,
hey,
So
Throwing
you got the dough for that, and I'm gonna get the dough for this. Mikey.
Eric was throwing a haymaker.
Yes, indeed. All
Yeah.
right, so let's talk about some studs from this past weekend.
The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better.
Mikey, we'll let you start.
All right. Well, there was
Well, obviously, we talked a lot about these guys already, but go ahead.
there were a lot of guys to choose from on CUP's team.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one guy that I'm going to go with is CD Lamb, just for the sheer fact that he was a guy that he was his first round pick. Those are the guys that you need to step up big in the playoffs. And while he's been good, he hasn't been CD Lamb like you had last year.
Yeah, circa 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this was a big game. It was his first time over 100 yards since week 8. He had 13 targets, caught the one touchdown, which was important, just to get him off to a good start. I mean, like I said, playoffs is when these number one picks have to come and carry you. And I felt like CeeDee Lamb finally had a week where, Quinn could finally say, finally, this is what I was expecting week to week.
No better time than a playoff game to get one of your best performances from one of your best players. And I'll stick with CUP and his boy, Terry McLaurin. Didn't I mention on the podcast last week I was nervous he was going to come in and have a big game against me? Well, guess what? He sure did. It was the second best total of the season at 22 points, 7 receptions, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think those 2 touchdowns, Miguel, came in the first half, too. Like, luckily, it wasn't worse. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but he was a guy that has really stepped up his game this year because of Jaden Daniels. And for CUP to have him in there in that flex spot, it's huge for him, obviously, and coming up with the win. So he was a guy that definitely stood out to me. Todd, anybody else stand out to you from the studs department?
Well, I'm going to go with Kevin's team and a player that, again, another great week and kind of propelling himself. This is kind of going into the next year, but Chase Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, Chase Brown is making making himself a good argument to be a first round pick next year for running backs. I mean, 25 points. I mean, know the Bengals, have been horrible this year, which is great. I mean, again, in the fantasy world, it's great because they have to throw the ball, run the ball. I mean, everything in between. But he's just been. I mean, Chase Brown. I'll say it now, and obviously we'll talk about it when we talk about where we went wrong or the busts or studs for the year or whatever. But Chase Brown, I'd surprise and just use the word phenomenal. Another good week, and said he's putting himself for be a first round pick next year. I don't think any of. I mean, I think Mikey, you said it that he was going to be great this year. Kind of underrated, but he ain't underrated anymore. So I think the fantasy football world's got to open their ears and listen.
Yeah, fourth game this season with 20 or more points.
Mm-hmm.
He does play Cleveland this week, and the last time he didn't reach double figures was against Cleveland when he had 6. So it could be tough for Eaton W's next week, but you have no choice but to play him. He's been tremendous. Mikey, another one? Another stud?
So yeah, I'm gonna go with Mike Evans.
Yeah.
And this was a game that got out of hand, and they kept throwing it to Mike Evans. And just this one is for Joe because it's something that I would definitely be concerned about since he's playing Kevin this week. They have come out and said, Baker Mayfield is the one that said it, that they're trying to get Mike Evans to 1,000 yards and to tie the record. I think it's Jerry Rice of like 10 consecutive years at 1,000 yards, and Evans was hurt, for a significant part of the year.
Yeah.
But they're trying to do everything they can to just feed him to get him there. He's like 251 yards short right now with 3 games to go. So it's interesting that you have these narratives that start coming into play that, yeah, I mean, Mike Evans could be a very, very good player down this stretch in the playoffs.
They're going to just feed him the rock
Force
until he
feed him the
gets
ball.
it. That's one of Todd's favorite things. Just keep feeding him the ball. What are you doing?
Force feeding.
Force feeding.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, Mike Evans, tremendous. He's got 9 touchdowns. Not a lot of receptions, but maybe we'll pick up some here late. And the last one I'll say for studs is just the Atlanta's defense. I used a waiver on a defense on the Commanders defense. CUP picked his up later after the fact. I thought I had the better defense. His defense stepped up in a bigger way. And I mean, that was before I think we knew that Desmond Ridder was going to be the quarterback. I don't know if that would have changed my decision at all, but that's a big time performance Monday night. That must be a great feeling for him to be able to, just like the previous weekend, just to get in the playoff. I had a lot of things happen on Monday night that helped me. I mean, I think he was a little more safer than I was. Mine took at the very end of the game. He was probably feeling pretty good throughout the whole game based on what we saw from Atlanta's defense. We mentioned it already. 4 sacks against the Raiders, 3rd string quarterback, 2 INTs, 2 block kicks, 23 points. Big time. Atlanta's defense getting that when he needed it the most. And let's go to let's go to the duds.
This is the worst. You are the worst. I hate looking at your face. I want to smash it.
Todd, give me a dud.
All right, I'm gonna go with what was it? Where is it? Oh, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Damn right.
3 points. There we go. There's 1 point for me. I get 1. Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. And again, this is probably the one that we'll talk about where we went wrong or who hyped up the wrong player. But Marvin Harrison Jr. has just not been. It's been a far cry from his 22-point game he had in week 2. Yeah, I mean 14, 13, 3, 14, 13, and 3. And yeah, it's not been what people were projecting. I mean, they were projecting him to be,
Don't say they, say we.
We. Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fantasy football world, the other experts. They, not. I know, not you. I know you're not part of they, but yeah, he just is not. Again, and we know wide receiver. When it comes to rookies for wide receivers, that's the one position it does take a minute to kind of get in a rhythm and everything like that compared to a running back. But he's just been. Yeah, it just hasn't been what people were projecting him to be. Yeah, I'll put it this way: Marvin Harrison Jr. might drop to like fifth round next year, sixth round next year, just because of how bad. Now, granted, people are probably going to draft him high anyway. But the point is, he's been bad this year. Bad. Stinks. 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 It stinks. It stinks. It stinks. So not good. And again, and out of all of us, I watched the most college football, and I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was projecting Marvin Harrison Jr. automatic. I think he said he'd be rookie of the year. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong, and I got to eat that. So here we go.
Marvin Harrison, the 13th wide receiver taken in our draft, which we actually thought was okay. But he's ranked 30th amongst all wide receivers after what he's done. 47 receptions, 687 yards, 7 touchdowns. Not terrible season for a rookie, but not from what Saad mentioned, all the experts thought he was going to do. Mikey, give me a dud.
Mine's Tua.
Yeah.
How do you have almost 30 completions but under 200 yards passing? That seems impossible to me.
Yeah, they didn't have Waddle, but they still have weapons. And I don't know. It's not like Houston's this great defense either, but I don't know. It's just one of those games. His luck ran out. Four games of 55 or more. And then rough day at the office this past weekend. The only other one I had, and you guys can give me some, I thought Tank Dell, we talked about it, 2 receptions, 15 yards, did have 26 rush yards, 6 total points. Very high. A lot of people very high on him coming in. We had these long conversations about who's the wide receivers from Houston that you want? Are they all going to be great? Stephon Diggs, blah, 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 blah. Nico Collins has definitely separated himself, but Tank Dell, even with Stephon Diggs well out of the mix at this point, didn't have a good one. But those are the only 3 that I have: Harrison, Dell, and Tua. Anybody have anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we'll keep going here because I can always hook up my power. I'm getting low on power here, but that's okay. Let's talk about next week's schedule. Here we go. Semifinals, ladies and gentlemen. Number 1, Kilgore Trout. They'll take on number 4, Eaton W's. Their lone matchup came in week 4, where Kilgore Trout won 127-108. The number 2, Hot Tamales, will take on number 3, Notorious CUP. The Tamales lost to CUP 94-93 in week 10 in a very low-scoring game. Fun fact, the Hot Tamales had 3 losses this season, and they were all to the 3 teams left in the semifinals.
I knew that.
I knew that.
Mikey, talk about your matchup. How you feeling? We are on Friday. I'm hoping. Actually, it's 12:42, so we're actually on Sunday or Saturday now. But we had a game already go through. I don't think that affected your matchup at all. But how are we feeling about your matchup right now?
I mean, it's definitely gonna be tough. I've got a lot of respect for Quayne and saw what his team did last week. I'm hoping that this week is going to be one of those 30-point Saquon weeks. I could really use that. I should have expected both of my quarterbacks to get benched on Monday and not to have any quarterbacks. So I had to pick up 2 off the waiver wire. And now I'm trying to decide which one to play between, Rodgers and Cooper Rush. And then I've got a big decision at wide receiver because, Hopkins and Jaden Reed have both struggled, and I am looking at what looks to be a snow game possibly Monday night.
I saw that.
With Green Bay, because Jaden Reed for me has more upside against the Saints defense, but then with the weather, I just don't know about that. So, and Hopkins unfortunately plays tomorrow, so
yeah,
my decision has to come tonight. So we'll see what I do.
Oh boy. So Aaron Rodgers in there versus the Rams at the current moment.
Oh yeah, and Hollywood Brown coming back, that does not help things either.
It does not. It does not. Kind of muddies things up. He probably won't get a lot of reps, but that definitely takes some away from Hopkins. On the other side, for Quayne, looks like he's got Jackson Smith and Jigba in there currently as the Seahawks take on Minnesota. Of course, Terry McLaurin has been amazing. He's taking them out as they're taking on Philly here this weekend. Have they played Philly before? He had 1 point against Philly back in week 11. So I can see why you would not feel good about putting him in. But going with Kyler Murray against Carolina, of course, Sam Darnold was amazing last week. Going to get 5 touchdown passes, but that was last week. I think that was last week, wasn't it? He was pretty amazing. No, that was 2 weeks ago. Last week, he had 37 points. But So yeah, some of the other things. Anything else that scares you? I mean, Kenny Walker's back for him. Collins, CD Lamb versus Tampa. That could be, oof, that could be scary. And Trey McBride versus Carolina. So that stack helped him last week at least a little bit.
Yeah,
All right.
it can be kind of a scary situation for sure. I'm not liking that CeeDee Lamb versus Tampa thing. I have ways to combat that if I want to decide to use, Cooper Rush in that.
Oh, that's true too.
What's really interesting to me is just the Kenneth Walker thing. I wonder how much of the volume he's gonna.
How healthy is he? And Zach Charbonnet has been playing well.
He has. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting situation.
And the other matchup, beating W's Kilgore Trout. We already saw Cortland Sutton only score 7 points, 5 receptions for 50 yards. The other thing that they were complaining about was Kevin left Gus Edwards on the bench, who had 19.95 points against the Broncos. I'm not going to fault him too much for that, just because the Broncos usually pretty stout. But Gus Edwards came on late to really pick up some points later. But he's running around with Chase Brown, Joe Mixon, and Breece Hall. No one's going to be like, whoa, what an idiot, So at least not yet. They both feel like he might be in line for Doe for the year, but there's still a lot to be determined. Anything else in this matchup that you guys see that's interesting?
What made me laugh about this is that who would have thought that a game at the end of the season between Jacksonville and the Raiders is going to play so much
Preach,
factor,
yeah.
because Joe has 2 Jaguars on his team, Ryan Thomas, Brenton Strange, and Kevin's got Brock Bowers, who could smash,
Yeah.
in this spot. So, I mean, Joe has the clear quarterback advantage.
Yes.
So it's going to be up to the others on Kevin's team to beat the others on Joe's team.
Cleveland did hold Burrow to 33 points in their first matchup, but that was way back in week 7 before he went off and started popping out 66, 75, 63, 53, 63, and 48. So,
yeah. I mean, just look at take Yahoo for what it's worth, but it shows
the projections
in both matchups how close it thinks both of these are going to be. Like less than a point in both spots.
Yeah, 134.13 to 134.97 after the matchup has started. With Cortland Sutton already with his 7.50 points. Well, there you have it. Goodness gracious. Here we are, semifinals. Next week, the finals. And then we'll have ourselves a new champion. Awesome, fun stuff. I wish everyone the best of luck.
Can I still be champion, please?
I thought you were focusing on being champion of the Conso bracket.
Come on, we all know. We all know I'm full of it when I say that. I want to be a champion, dang it. But I will say this because I'll give another prediction. I think it'll be Joe and Mikey playing for the championship.
I'm sure Mikey would love that.
Yeah, Mikey doesn't care who he has to play. He just wants to make it.
Okay. Well, but I think if anything, both of your teams. I mean, you have the firepower with the running backs. Because at the end of the day, I told you this last night, Mikey, was if where it kind of works in your favor a little bit with your 3 running backs is all 3 of those teams they have to play all the way through. They can't because the Eagles still want to get the number 1 seed. The Ravens still might have an outside shot of maybe catching the Chiefs maybe for 1 seed. I mean, some stuff has to happen, but and Green Bay still needs to keep playing to stay afloat. So that's the matchup, and that's the scenario I see with your team. If they keep on playing, that gives you between all 3 of those running backs, it gives you 100+ points. So that's what you got to hope for. But Joe's team is no joke either. So it should be interesting.
Well, all of these teams are pretty incredible at this point. A lot of big point scores, a lot of big performances we've seen so far. Should be a fun one. Well, we got to get out of here. It's already at 12:49 here in Newport News, Virginia. I'm going to try to get this out here as soon as I'm done talking to you guys so we can have it for everyone else, because there are games on Saturday as well. So for Mikey Renaud, Todd Diamond, I'm Eric Lansing. We'll see you next time on the MHA podcast.